Hello, my name is Dr. Arif Rajpura and I chair the Lancashire Changing Futures Board. For over 12 months now, Changing Futures Lancashire has been providing help to Lancashire people who experience multiple disadvantage, which is a combination of homelessness, poor mental health, domestic abuse, substance misuse and involvement with the criminal justice system. As well as providing help, the programme is an evaluation to see what help is the most effective in helping people overcome complex problems, and also to identify barriers to access. The learning from the programme is incredibly useful to help understand how we can design and deliver services in the future, but also through case studies and life stories of people who are recovering from this hopeless situation. Through hearing these stories, we have identified that often disadvantaged people experience stigma, which can help explain a hidden barrier, how people feel about themselves. Stigma is a complex issue, and in this film we will hear from people with lived experience navigators, other professionals, leading academics about stigma, its causes, but also what we would like you to do differently to help. Please remember that people with drug and alcohol issues did not have a predetermined life that directed them that way. They are human beings who deserve our compassion, support and assistance.
My name is Professor Nicola Graham-Kevin from the University of Central Lancashire. The evidence base around the causes of stigma is still evolving. However, many suggest that it is very difficult to deal with the underlying trauma without first dealing with the issues of stigma. What we do know is that some people, there are physiological effects to experiencing stigma, such as anxiety or feeling ashamed, and so wanting to physically isolate to avoid any other triggers to feeling stigma at that time. This isolation worsens poor mental health and also begins the spiral down. There has been some research into stigma for particular groups, such as those living with HIV and also those living with addiction and those living with poor mental health, including long-term mental health conditions. In all cases, it is recognised that stigma occurs when the shame that person is feeling is met with feeling judged by people or systems.
I'm Dr. Andrew Tye, a chartered psychologist who works for Delphi Medical, who provides substance misuse services in Blackpool and Blackburn and Darwen and across Lancashire. People may start using substances for many reasons, such as to have fun, to fit in, or to help them cope with difficult thoughts and feelings. However, physical dependency and actions in response to this can lead to blame and shame. Public stigma is when a person is judged by others in a negative way, and self-stigma is when a person internalises negative stereotypes and public stigma. This can lead to avoidance of situations which can seem threatening, isolation and a vicious cycle of using substances to manage uncomfortable thoughts and feelings. It is important, therefore, to try to overcome these barriers to help people access support to make positive changes. This is done by developing safe and trusting relationships in which a person doesn't feel judged, shamed or punished for what they may have done or what may have happened to them. By doing so, a person can take steps to develop understanding, find different ways of coping, and to build self-confidence and develop a lifestyle free of substance dependency.
Hi, my name is Justin Srivastava and I'm a police superintendent from Lancashire Constabulary, leading the trauma-informed Lancashire work for the Violence Reduction Network. The VRN has provided trauma-informed training to over 8,000 frontline workers, which means that when people come forward for help, workers are better able to respond, so reducing the stigma that a person feels about their situation. This means that that person is more likely to feel supported, respond to the help, and so be less likely to continue with harmful behaviours to themselves or others. Understanding the neuroscience of trauma and then recognising signs and symptoms at an early stage is key to adopting a preventative trauma-informed approach. However, it's not just about the training. It's about continuous professional improvement to develop an effective approach when working with members of the public.
My name is Avia Lowndes and I have worked at Empowerment Charity within our Young Persons Domestic Abuse Support Service, the DEN, for 6 years. Most of this time has been as a Children's Independent Domestic Violence Advisor, and I have seen the impact of stigma around domestic abuse on the many young people and families that we've supported. This includes working on breaking down some of those barriers that people have to sharing their stories and accessing support. One of those barriers is stigma and shame. Shame may be felt in the form of internalised blame or guilt, as if what happened to them was somehow their fault or they didn't do enough to stop it from happening or come away from the situation sooner. while stigma manifests as a societal attitudes of victim blaming and negative perception of survivors. Both shame and stigma have significantly impacted on survivors' individual self-esteem, self-image and overall well-being, as well as their recovery and willingness to seek support. When thinking about young people, there are so many other things and other complexities that can lead to stigma and shame that get in the way of seeking support and become barriers. I believe that tackling shame and stigma could go a long way to help young people to access support and also divert those who have caused harm to others from continuing these behaviours into adulthood. It is important to challenge and address both shame and stigma surrounding gender-based violence to create a more supportive and empathetic environment for survivors where they can heal and thrive without unnecessary burden or judgment.
The Cambridge Dictionary defines stigma as a strong lack of respect for a person or group of people or a bad opinion of them because they've done something society does not approve of. When talking about addiction, for example, many people have a preconceived idea about what a drug addict looks like and acts like. This can guide their behaviour. Stigma means that people can be subject to unconscious or conscious bias when dealing with services, organisations or people in the community. In the same way as we talk about some institutions being institutionally racist or sexist, the same can apply around other stigmas. Stigma can also be taken on by the person themselves. Tell someone often enough that they're worthless and will never amount to anything, and they start to believe it themselves. This becomes a barrier to reaching out for help and builds within a person over time. Being stigmatised or feeling stigmatised can cause guilt and shame to resurface, and past trauma can be re-triggered. When a person takes on stigma themselves, they can feel marginalised and excluded. Stigma means people simply don't feel equal to others.
Hi, I'm Beth and I'm a survivor of domestic violence and know the stigma that can be felt when all of that abuse is happening. I felt ashamed to tell anyone and also felt totally alone, not wanting to go out, having to wear certain clothes, fear of seeing people or people asking why I didn't leave. It's so complicated and confusing, and the stigma, the feeling different, is so strong. When you are in it, the stigma controls you just like the abuser does.
Hi, my name's Marcus. I'm the Changing Futures Navigator for Central and West Lancashire. I've been asked to talk about my personal experience with stigma and how it has affected me both personally and professionally. Stigma is when someone sees you in a negative way based off something that may not be in your control, like poor mental health or sexual orientation. I myself have suffered with poor mental health in the past, and the stigma surrounding this, I feel, has prevented me from gaining employment. Poorly managed mental health is a taboo subject, especially in the Caribbean and West Indian culture, and contributes towards the stigma. Also, being an ex-con and an addict in recovery, it's safe to say that I've experienced some stigma along my journey to becoming a productive member of society. Although this likely stems from society's outlook on people who struggle with substance misuse and other disadvantages. Stigma plays a massive part in the passion I have for this role and this line of work as a whole. As a navigator for Changing Futures, I have the opportunity to be a part of a system that is plagued with stigma, and also show people who we support that change is possible through lived experience and visual recovery.
So when I was at my lowest point, a lot of people treated me as if I didn't exist. You know, like they shunned me off, like I was worth nothing.
At my lowest point, people were looking down on me and you weren't treated with respect or anything.
I remember once when I overdosed, I was in the hospital and they'd given me that naloxone to bring me round, and I heard one of the nurses talking together, and they were saying about when that rattle kicks in, he'll leave the hospital to go and score.
When I was at my lowest point, I felt useless and worthless, because not just because of my own how I felt, it was because of the way other people made me felt as well, though. You know, like they made me feel like I wasn't worthy, wasn't acceptable, wasn't acceptable to be around them, or things like that. Or even though, you know, there's a lot of people that give you stigma that are a lot worse off, you know. So
at the time, it made me feel worthless.
I felt disgusted, but it was true what they were saying. But they shouldn't have been saying things like that. They're in a professional position of caring.
But in one way, people could have done things differently is by saying, like, you know, knowing me all life, instead of trying to put me down in my bad points of my life. They could have been there to help me through them bad points of my life, because they was only just doing the same things, most of them anyway, and the ones that wasn't put you down, and the ones that are still put you down. And you know, they could have made it, they could have helped, they could have made it better, you know, like instead of doing it with me and then I'm the bad person.
To feel that way, you should be treated with respect and not people being judgmental.
So when I got my help, the feelings didn't go away straight away, not at all. They're still there, and they are slowly going, you know, when you find out the right people, the ones that are causing the stigma and the ones that are causing them problems. If you can stay away from it and realise that you are doing what you're supposed to be doing, you're just doing it in a different way.
They should have been advising me, you know, in a more compassionate way.
You needed the confidence. If you've got confidence, to open up. And most of the support workers have been on the same journey as me. Even though this is a new journey, they're still on their journey, just like me. And they don't judge.
Thank you
for watching this film
and the professional perspectives
and personal experiences within it.
Now please help us make stigma a thing of the past.
Yeah.